and get started. I just want to welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn about the Wisconsin Farm Center. I'm Wendy Cannell, the Director of Training and Leadership Development here at Wisconsin Farm Bureau. And so we had a little bit of a change in our schedule, and we're happy to welcome Frank Friar from the Farm Center, who's just going to talk a little bit about the resources that are available from the Farm Center. If you have any questions, please feel free. There should be a chat feature on Zoom so you can ask your questions, or we will have a few minutes at the end of today's discussion to ask questions as well. So I'm going to toss it over to Frank and let him introduce himself and then get started talking about Frank and his assistant today.
Good morning. I'm Frank Friar. I'm with the Farm Center of the Wisconsin Department of Ag. I'm happy to be here this morning. I'm filling in for Angie Sullivan. Her husband is having some health issues, so I'm happy to be here. I have worked in the Farm Center now longer than anybody else in the Farm Center. I've been there 10.5 years. Previous to that, I spent 30 years in the lending business and did a variety of jobs, anywhere from being an account officer to being in charge of marketing to being a credit officer to being chief financial officer. So I did a variety of things. I retired. I was a little bored being retired, and I was asked if I was interested in doing this. And I said, yeah, I would love to do this. And I'll do it for a couple of years, and I'm going to retire again. And here I am 10.5 years. So the Farm Center is an absolutely wonderful place. I love working there. Why? Because we help farmers. The Farm Center is part of the Ag Development Division. There are a number of divisions in the Department of Ag, like food safety, ARM, consumer protection, and all those are regulatory agencies. We're the only non-regulatory part of the Department of Ag. That means that we can work with people. We're not out there enforcing anything. We're simply there to guide farmers and help them through their entire farm life. And there are people who've been calling into the Farm Center from time to time over a 25 to 30-year period. We are part, as I said, part of the Ag Development Group. And the other parts of that Ag Development Group, there's an Ag and Food Center. I'm guessing you've all heard of Something Special from Wisconsin. That's part of that. Farm to School and local food support, where we're working with trying to get farm from the farm to the table and doing that through schools. So students start out with good eating habits, start out with nutritious food, start out understanding the high quality of food that we produce here in Wisconsin. And then another part of that is agribusiness and value added. We work with, if you were a farm operation and you said, I think I want to start producing some value added product, and you have some idea, we would give you some support in doing that. Another part of the Ag Development Division is the International Center. We have 5 or 6 people that travel the world, primarily China, Mexico, South America, and they work on exporting food products, work on exporting ag products from Wisconsin. Many times those people from foreign countries come here and tour our factories, tour our farms, so they have a better understanding of how we produce food, the quality of the food, the safety of the food, and then hopefully they take that back to whatever nation they're from, and that helps them in marketing Wisconsin farm products. Then we also have, as part of the Farm Center, Allison Dairyland. You're all well familiar with that. We have county fairs that we work with all the county fairs, and we work with market orders. Like when you're voting for, there's an election coming up, dairy farmers of Wisconsin that used to be called the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board. We actually run those elections so they're fair, they're objective, and they're neutral. So nobody can say, well, they're doing this or they're doing that. They're run by a total neutral total non-biased agency. So the Farm Center, and as Wendy said, as I'm going through this, feel free to ask me questions at any time. I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't know something, I'll tell you that also. I won't just give you an answer for the sake of giving an answer. We work with farmers all the time. We want to be objective, we want to be fair, we want to be accurate. So why do we exist? The Wisconsin Farm Center helps producers navigate their farming life cycle from beginning through growth, change, challenging times, succession, and retirement. And we have people that we've done all of those stages in their life and have worked with them and given them advice. We were started in the 1980s, depending on the age of the people listening and the age of the people who will go on and do this afterwards. If you were around the 1980s and you were farming, you remember how disastrous that was. Some of you may have just heard people talking about it, but it was started in the 1980s, started to be more of an advocate for farmers, saying, here's the farmer out here and he's fighting all these issues, primarily financial issues. Where does he turn for help? So we started out being an advocate for farmers, and that was to help farmers grow. It was to keep people farming. And if we couldn't keep them farming, to find a professional, organized, dignified way of exiting farming. What are the strengths of the Farm Center? Why would you call the Farm Center? Well, one is we have a broad mandate under state law. That means we get calls, we call one-time calls. Somebody may call and say, my neighbor and I are fighting over the fence. Which side of the fence is ours? Which side is theirs? It may be that an organic producer calling saying, my neighbor just sprayed the field and I have drift. Now I've got an issue. How do I resolve those issues? So lots of one-time questions. This time of year, we get a lot of questions on landlord-tenant situations. The tenant calls and says, I thought I rented this farm and I did some fall tillage, and then now I go over and somebody else is taking my fall tillage and they're doing more tillage, or they're in there planting. What do I do? And so we talk about the importance of written contracts. Wisconsin does have, for farmers only, involving rent. There is some law that talks about verbal contracts. You are far better off not to end up with a verbal contract. Privacy protection. Anything that you share with us is totally confidential. That's by state law. So we keep it private. We get lots of requests. Somebody may call and say, I'd like to know who are dairy farmers in Wisconsin. They can call the Department of Administration to get that, but we can't release that. If you recall back last spring when Grassland announced to 58 dairy producers that we're not going to pick your milk up anymore, those producers could call us and give us their names. They could give us confidential information, but we could not share that with anybody. That was a plus in that we maintained our confidentiality. Occasionally, we would have liked to have shared, but that's against what we stand for. We have a skilled staff. As I said, I've spent 30 years in the lending business, over 10 years now in this business. Another person, Mike Lochner, has 20 years in the lending business and 2 or 3 years here. And then we have Amy Sullivan. Amy has spent a lot of time in her life. She actually farmed for a while. She's a certified organic certifier, so she has a lot of experience and works with people who are looking at certifying or going organic. She has a vast knowledge of grazing. She does that and also does some financial analysis and some transition planning. So we work closely with Extension. We work closely with adult ag teachers. we're here to complement what they're doing. We're not here to compete with them. We have a great working relationship with those organizations, along with many other ag organizations. We do some things with Farm Bureau. We did a number of presentations to the young farm group on transition planning. We've done it with two other groups within Farm Bureau.
Hey, Frank, we do have one question somewhat related to that is, what help can the Farm Center provide in forming a partnership or LLC in a farm?
Good question, and one I'll answer here, and then I'll probably repeat myself a little later on. But we do, I would say we provide a vast array of education on legal entities. We have packets that we've put together, and so lots of times the farmer may go to their local attorney, and the attorney, and we have a great relationship with a lot of attorneys. They may say, why don't you go back to the farm center or go to the farm center and have them talk about limited liability companies, C Corps, S Corps, what's a formal partnership, what's a joint partnership mean? And we will go through that. We will come right out to the farm and sit down at the table, not just talk about it like we are here in a big meeting, but talk about it individually. How does it affect that farmer? Why is it good or not good for this farmer? What are the pros and cons? And it's something that farmers really need to look at as farming is changing, as business is changing, is looking at some of these legal entities and what does it provide as far as risk protection? What kind of liability issues do you get protection from? What is the ease in transferring property when you do it through shares of stock rather than doing it through saying, well, I'll give each of my children 40 acres this year. Well, then next year you're going to give them each 40 acres, but you find out some of the 40 acres are landlocked. Now you've got a problem. If you're giving away shares and you say, I'm going to give each of my children 40 shares of an undivided part of the farm, so they have, let's say those 40 shares are 10% ownership in an undivided interest in the entire acreage of the farm. Much easier to work with, easier for people to get into the legal entity and easier for them to get out. So very good question.
So essentially, if someone needed assistance for that, they would contact the farm center, talk to someone there, and then move forward?
Yeah, yes. And if they contact the farm center, I'll use this number a number of times. Our toll-free number is 800-942-2474, and I'm guessing that you also have.
I did provide that number. My apologies to everyone. I put 912 instead of 942. So I'm putting it in the chat feature so everyone can see it.
So yes, whoever is asking that question or anybody else, please feel free to contact us. And everything doesn't have to be a big formal presentation. We get lots of, as I said earlier, one-person calls or one-time calls. Somebody may call and say, tell me a little about a limited liability company, or we have one on our farm, but we have this question, and we'll answer that question. And if you want to go deeper, we will go deeper. Our job is to meet your needs. Our job is not to download more information than you need, nor is it to hold back information. We have nothing to sell. There is no fee for our service. I tell people there's no direct cost for the farm center. I don't tell them it's free because some people believe if it's free, it doesn't have any value. It's not free. When you pay your state income taxes, you're paying for it. So it's not a free service, but you will individually, you will not get a bill. Farm center services, I mentioned a little with Angie. We do quite a bit of work with people wanting to become certified producers, or they want to produce a certified value-added product. We have a herd-based diagnostic program. That program right now is a little bit of a question mark area, in that we did have 2 full-time veterinarians, and they were consulting veterinarians, not regulatory veterinarians, and they would come out and do a complete analysis of your dairy operation, and they give you feedback, hoping whatever issues you have, they can find them and help solve them. They can increase your production. Maybe they can lower your feed costs. One of them retired after about 30. He started in the 1980s in the farm center. Unfortunately, our other veterinarian has got major health issues, so he's doing some work, but not at the level he would like to be doing it. So we're hoping he recovers, and then that service will be much more broadly pushed. But we do have some people who are using it. Transition planning, that's one of the big things. Probably the two biggest things we do in the farm center. Transition planning would be the largest function that we were providing, and we get referrals from attorneys, accountants, lenders, and we do a fair amount of outreach like this presentation, and then people will call. Another is viability analysis. Farmers may call and say, do you think I can make it? I've got these kind of debts. I'm running up feed bills, gas bills. Milk price doesn't look good. Will you do an analysis? We get calls from lenders saying, we've referred the farmer to come and see you. Why? Because you're an objective third party. You have no reason not to give them an objective answer. You're not selling them anything. They're not buying anything from you. They're simply getting an evaluation of their farm. Those would be the two biggest things that we probably spend time doing. Then again, we've talked a little about the organic. We assist producers in transitioning from conventional to organic. We talk about the process. What does it take? What do they have to do? We assist with organic certification paperwork and organic cost share applications. And again, when I talked about Angie, she does most of that. We assist producers in determining the viability of adding specialty crops. It's easy to say right now, and this is not part of the farm center, we probably have over 100, I forget the number, it's a large number of people saying we want to raise hemp. Well, it's not as simple as saying I'm going to buy seed and go out and raise it. You have to go through a number of processes, and then you want to find out, just because you're raising it, is it profitable for your farm? Does it make sense for you to raise it? Is there a market for it? Where is that market at? So it's a fairly involved process, and the people in the Department of Ag are working on it. So if you call the farm center, we'll get you one of those people. And then Angie's also a source for grazing. As people look at alternative ways of producing milk besides conventional, organic, freestall, stanchion, some people are like grazing. They cut their costs. They're finding another way to create a profit. Herd-based diagnosis, I've talked a little about that. Kind of interesting. I'm looking at some information that we presented at a meeting, and here's what headlines in Wisconsin Ag. Milk surplus causes concern. Larger farms drawing scrutiny. Farmers struggle with rising costs. That was the headlines from the Monroe Evening Times in 1978, 40 years ago. And here we are right back in the same thing. And the only reason I'm bringing that out is occasionally somebody says, well, why do we need a farm center? Farms are getting larger. We have fewer people out there needing help. They can go to their own attorney if they need help. Well, yeah, all those things are happening. We still want to keep farmers farming. Our number one goal in the farm center is to keep you farming. And to be honest with you enough that if it's not working out and your situation isn't working out, to help you exit farming and maximize the amount of dollars that you take away, because that becomes part of your estate. And everybody hopes to get older. We talk about getting older. We talk about retiring. And then part of that goes with, can you afford to retire? Do you have the finances you need to retire? What do you plan on doing in retiring? How many days a year do you want to be on vacation? So there's a lot more to retiring than simply sitting at the coffee shop saying, I'm retired, this is a great life. I'm not sure And I told you I tried retiring for a while. Retiring and going fishing every day, plus I can't catch any fish. I didn't find that exciting. I do a little bit of deer hunting, but 3 days a year is about all the deer hunting I need. So we spend time talking with people a lot about retiring. What are their plans? What are their goals? What assets do they plan on keeping in retiring? What assets do they plan on dispersing when they retire? Who's going to take over the farm? Is it one of their kids? Is it the neighbor's son or daughter? Who's going to take over this farm? So we spend a lot of time with people going through that. Actually, when we sit down for our first time and we try to have financial information ahead of time, so we know that financially some idea what dollars are there available for retirement, what dollars are available on that farm for the young farmer to buy out the parents. And then it's saying, okay, let's talk about all of these things. What are your goals? What are the things you want to do? What are your greatest fears? And what are you doing to reduce those fears so that they're not there, that when you go to bed at night, they're not haunting you? So we look at all those different issues, and we may spend, typically, we will spend 2.5 to 3 hours the first time we meet going through these kinds of questions and concerns. And they're not and it's easy to say, oh yeah, here's just one page, but what are your goals? Sometimes to add a little bit of humor to this, the wife or mother will say, well, remember we talked about going to Hawaii or Alaska or somewhere. I want to travel some. And the husband or father saying, well, if I could drive around the township on Sunday afternoon for a couple hours and see what my neighbors are doing, that's quite a bit of traveling, isn't it?
That's a good one, Frank. Hey, you talk about sitting down, for a few hours to talk about this. Do farmers need to come to Madison, or will you go to the farm? How does that work?
We go right to the farm. We believe in sitting right at their kitchen table because we may ask for more information than originally requested. They're more relaxed in their kitchen table. And we look at it and say, Madison's the capital. That's where the Department of Ag is located. It's not your fault if you live at River Falls, if the Department of Ag is in Madison. And if you live in Dane County or you live in DeForest right outside of Madison, you get the advantage of being closer. We try to provide the same service whether you're at the far end of the state, north or south, east or west, or whether you're in the middle of the state. Other questions?
What other questions do you have? You can either type them in the comments section, or you can unmute yourself and ask them directly to Frank here on the webinar.
And while we're waiting for those to come in, maybe I'll wait for the key from you, Wendy, when there's some questions. So other things we talked about in that session, we talked about the goals, we talked about the fears. What do you think in your own mind as you're sitting wherever you may be, that the biggest fear that most farmers have? When I say farmers, I'm including the husband and the wife, the farm unit, you can say the older generation, you can say the retiring people. The number one biggest fear they have is seeing their assets being used to support them if they end up going to a nursing home. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about that. Just to give you some idea, and if you've had parents in a nursing home, you know this, but what's the average cost? Well, the average person stays there about 3 years. The average cost, it depends on the amount of care you need. If you have Alzheimer's or you're a patient because of whatever happened to you along the way, that you need great attention, that you need care to feed yourself, bathe, that you're a high patient requirement, you may be looking at $10,000 to $12,000 a month. That's $120,000 a year. And unless you do some planning on with those assets, on how you can protect them. Actually, we always say the nursing home turns the bill over to the county, and the county then goes after the farm, and they may not take your farm away right away, but they can put a lien against it. And if you ever go to sell it or transfer it, the lien is there. At some point, you're going to have to pay. And so there are things you can do. So we spend a fair amount of time talking about what are those options. Mm-hmm. Any questions out there, Wendy?
No questions came in, but I do just want to provide a little bit of a recap. The fact that the services that the Farm Center provides are confidential and free to farmers in Wisconsin, and that the services range from a variety of things. So a viability study, whether or not you can continue farming, or maybe some changes that you can implement in the farm. Transition and succession planning, how we can move the farm from one generation to the next. And then also, if you just need someone to talk to, calling the Farm Center and being able to talk to someone, I think are some of the very valuable resources that the Farm Center offers. So, Frank, do you have any last words of wisdom before we sign off today?
Well, yes, I do. An area that we haven't talked about, and I'm jumping around a little bit, we're talking transition planning. And again, I don't know the age of the people who are listening, but let's just say it's a cross section. One of the things that people don't have, it doesn't cost you anything to get it. You can go to the county any of your county social services, and there's two kinds of documents that are very important for people to have. One is called the power of attorney for medical. The power of attorney for medical, if you're married, hospitals, doctors, nurses may not require it, but let's say that you have a son or daughter who's over age 18 and they're single. Without having a medical power of attorney, you are not allowed to make any decision on their medical care. So when you hear these disasters where they'll say there's 200 people missing, there's 100 people missing, they're not all missing. What they are is they can't be identified. If they're in a hospital, the hospital cannot say, yes, Frank Friar is here to my parents because of privacy laws. So if you have sons or daughters that are over age 18 and they're not married, somebody needs to have a medical power of attorney. The same thing with another kind of power of attorney called a financial power of attorney. If you're running a farm, if you're living in town, you basically have a house and you have your real estate taxes, your property insurance, your food bills, all your family living, you're probably all right. But if you're running a farm, if you're running a 100-cow dairy farm, you're running a 500-cow dairy farm, you're running a 1,000-acre cash crop, whatever it may be, and you get injured, let's say both you and your wife get injured, and the injuries affect your mental condition, and it's time to plant, and you haven't borrowed the money, who's going to borrow that money? You are not sound, stable mind to do it. There's no guardian appointed over you at that point, and your kids, unless they can borrow in their own name, they cannot borrow on behalf of you. And so you need to have, for protection, we talk quite a bit, another part of what we do in the transition planning is quite a bit of time on this power of attorney for both medical and for financial. That's extremely important. So we spend time there. We spend time, do you have health insurance? Most people do have health insurance. When you're young, you think you're infallible, that nothing will ever happen to you. Well, lots of times we find young single men not having health insurance saying, I'm tough, I'm not going to get sick. Well, we all know that farming is one of the more dangerous occupations that people do get injured on farms. And if you stick your hand in the chopper and you cut off your hand at your wrist, you're probably looking at a $250,000 to $300,000 medical bill. And if you don't have any insurance, can your farm afford to pay that? Can you do that? So you got to look at medical insurance. Another insurance that we have people at least evaluate, and that would be long-term care insurance. So if you go to a nursing home, can you cover part of that cost? I know nobody likes insurance premiums, and you hate paying the premium, but why do you do that? Peace of mind that you don't have the risk, that you don't lose your farm. If you're in a car accident, if your barn burns down, if you're in the northern part of Wisconsin and you have the unfortunate situation of the snow causing your buildings to collapse, well, were they insured or not insured? We get calls asking that question. We can't answer that without reading the policy, but we cover a lot of those things. We cover them from an education saying, this is what's available, here's what you could do. It's their farm, it's their life, they need to decide what to do.
All right. Well, Frank, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to thank you for giving all of this great information today. I think even those last few tidbits are just so important for everybody to know. I put in the chat section the contact information for the Farm Center, but we will send that out following the webinar as well. So if you need any assistance from the Farm Center, please do not hesitate to contact them. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you to Frank Friar from the Farm Center at the Department of Agriculture for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks, Frank.
And thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed doing this. Thanks.
Great. Have a good day.
Thank you.